It's time for the Access of Easy podcast, the weekly technology digest that keeps you ahead of the curve. Brought to you by EasyDNS.com.
Good evening or good morning, I guess, everyone, depending on when you're watching this.
Or afternoon.
Yeah, it could be afternoon. Yeah, there's 3 different times. That's right. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Access of Easy. This is the audio sidekick, audio compendium to the weekly Access of Easy newsletter. You can sign up for Access of Easy through EasyDNS on accessofeasy.com. This is number 308, Len, 308 times Mark and team have put out the newsletter. My name is Joey. As I mentioned, that's Len in the other panel. Buddy, what is going on in your neck of the woods? How you doing?
I am great, Joey. Just doing laundry, so a lot of domesticated chores being done at the moment, and I have to take advantage of the evening times over here that we have less. The energy costs less over here when we use it up after 7 p.m. So I've adjusted my habits over here to take advantage of cheaper energy. I have conformed as to what they want me to do. So everything's good. How about you, Joey? How's everything over there?
The behavioral nudge has worked on you. It's good, man. We had a little bit of a long week here. I won't get into it. You know what happened. We'll talk about it on the CVP a little bit on Monday, I'm sure. But we are also doing domestic chores. We're moving, obviously. And tomorrow, I don't know if you've ever done like a move in a while. I don't know if this is like a new thing or an old thing. But I guess when you buy a house, you get 2 other chances to walk through it once the purchase agreement is done. And so my wife and I did our walkthrough with her parents maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I forget now. And the buyer for our place wants to walk through tomorrow. And there's stuff all over the place. There's boxes and everything. And we're trying to strike a balance between what is a pragmatic way to approach this? Should we try and clean the place up? Does it matter? The dotted line's already been signed on. I don't really know, right? So
we're
looking for
damage.
We're gonna do our best to get some stuff out at least and make good on the opportunity. Although I will be doing laundry tomorrow morning, Len. Okay, I do it when the energy is expensive. I do it when it's expensive because I am just that kind of guy. I will not conform. I will not live in the pod, eat the bugs, or use the cheap energy.
Wow.
I will use it whenever I want. Anytime I want to use it, I'm using it. Anyway, so
how often do you do it? I'm curious because over here it's it honestly 5 times a week.
Yeah, I don't do laundry that often, so that's a difference maker for me. Plus, usually at night, I do other stuff, right? So me and you do the shows a couple nights a week. I play a sport some nights. I go to the gym some nights. The days I work from home, I typically try and do something during the day, whether it's like dishwasher or laundry, every single time.
Here's what I do. Set the timer for 6 a.m. to start. By 7 o'clock, it's done, and I hang dry it. So I don't even use a dryer for most.
I hang dry too.
Even in the wintertime, I hang dry it too inside. But so I set it up so it's using it cheap from 6 to 7 in the morning, and it's ready at 7. Boom, and I can hang it, and it's good to go. So throughout the day, it dries, and I've saved hundreds of dollars like this by not using a dryer. Screw that.
We're off to an absolute blazing start here on Access of Cheap Energy podcast. So let's get into last week's quote here. Last week's quote of the week. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. That was Martin Luther King Jr. And the winner was Mike. Big congrats to Mike. Your next renewal on the house, EasyDNS. This week's quote: you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Who was that by? I don't know.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Sure. It almost sounds like a Jeff Booth quote. I'm not sure though if that's who it was. I hope I didn't just give that away. I don't think that.
Yeah, I don't even know who it is.
There's so many historically important figures in the quote of the week. I doubt very much that he would just throw a Booth one in there, but I guess we'll find out. If you
don't, we win a month of free.
That'd
be awesome.
I'll defer to someone else. If you know who it's by, can't Google it. Don't search it up. Put it in the comments. You guys know the drill. And of course, you get a deal on your next renewal if you're right. So Len, without delaying here, it's a huge week. 8 stories this week from the team over at Access of Easy, making us work on a Thursday night.
And you know what? Thankfully, no WorldCoin stories. So I'm very thankful for that because I really.
Why do you hate talking about WorldCoin? We didn't talk about that on our show either. WorldCoin seems like a good fit for this program. I'm surprised I didn't see it.
It's just low energy. That's all it is. It truly is. Anyways, let's talk about some ISPs that may be under fire in the UK. The UK government, they're trying to pass a bill that would allow them to censor the internet without due process. And this means that they can go out there and block any content that they feel to be, quote, harmful, without having to prove that it actually is harmful. This could even include political dissent, criticism of the government, or even things that they just find offensive at a whim. And the bill, which is being dubbed the Online Safety Bill, it's basically a way for the government to control what they see and what we see and what we hear as a way that's favorable for them. And they're using the guise, as they always do, for the protection of children as a way to justify this massive overreach of power. But it's unclear that this is really all about that and more about controlling the flow of information. That's probably it, in my opinion. If the bill passes, it's not yet done so, it's going to be a major blow to freedom of expression online. And it's also going to set a dangerous precedent for other countries around the world, including Canada, which has a few bills already out there and some that may be coming in the future. But I don't want to talk about that too much for reasons I don't want to discuss. But with respect to this bill, this is something that's in the works, so it's not yet passed. So people should know what's coming in the UK. The UK has been really, really bad lately with a whole bunch of different topics, a whole bunch of different attack vectors, and this is another one. So really, don't let this happen. You have the ability to fight back against this bill. Democracy is having your voice or voicing your displeasure to your elected representative. Do so right now if you live in the UK, because this is something that's very dangerous and is crossing a line that should not be crossed.
There's so many ways to approach a story like this, and we've had a few of them over the few months we've done this program, and of course the years we've done CBP as well. The thing that comes to mind right away is this idea of protecting kids, how important it is, online safety, blah blah blah. Wouldn't it be fair to say at this point that whatever online safety measures we've taken so far have basically failed in terms of protecting children and aiding in their development, their safe development? If I look at the Zoomers, especially in big tech, how has that gone? What I've seen so far is a lot of Zoomers and millennials basically continue to carry out this this regime of extreme censorship in the name of protecting, quote unquote, protecting, different vulnerable groups, be it children or certain gender groups or certain religious groups, whatever. And what do we see all the time? When the stones are overturned, it always comes down to, we don't like this opinion, we're not going to allow it to be heard. And in the UK now, it's funny that this online harms bill is coming to is going through legislative processes over there, because we've just seen Farage, obviously, also, right? The politicizing of what should be public tools, whether it's banking and payment rails or things like the town square online. Having an opinion that's unpopular with the people who are running these services is not something that needs to be shut down. But I'm surprised, Len, this was an opportunity for you to really pump something like Nostr or other decentralized platforms where you can share information that are, that are very difficult to censor and shut down and even identify the people who are using them, to be honest with you, more than anything. And I think you're going to see a rise in that as this continues. You mentioned the Canada thing. I won't touch on it too much either, but we should at least mention that we've kind of started to slide down this hill as well. Whether it's with news or online harassment legislation. And there seems to be, if you only watch the 3-letter news agencies that are more or less funded by the federal government, there seems to be support for these things, broadly speaking, from that part of the country. This is dangerous stuff. I think over time, if you look on a long enough time horizon backwards, the censors are almost never correct. And, we've seen that recently with so many different things, not least of which is COVID and things of this nature. It's disappointing, man. And that doesn't, the worst part about it, I think, is it doesn't seem like intelligent people are learning their lesson. That's the frustrating part.
One of the 3-letter companies that are providing us news here in Canada, they gave us a real doozy today. And I learned that it's possible that this July could be the hottest month on record in 120,000 years. Yes, going back that far. They have detailed records. So thank you, CTV, for providing that information. And I am now scared to do anything these days as a result. But anyways, we'll talk about Airbnb.
You know what? First of all, CTV, I saw a headline on CTV at the gym the other day, and it was about a U.S. state, I believe Arizona, and it was global warming causing ground to be so hot that it burns residents. And I thought to myself, I'm pretty sure if I walk barefoot in my driveway after May, I'll burn my feet. Have these people never walked outside in bare feet? Is this like
we're approaching, what is it, global boiling? No longer global warming. You cross the threshold to boiling. So if you step outside your home, you risk being boiled like an egg. So yeah, so be very careful, everybody. Don't get boiled. Stay inside. Anyways, Airbnb. We've never talked about Airbnb on this show before. I don't even think on our show. It's something we don't talk a lot about. But anyways, it looks like Airbnb now can do whatever they want, and even if you have a valid reservation, they could even screw you over. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Syed Haider, he was angry on Twitter. He actually tweeted out and reached out to Access of Easy, and the reason why he was so angry is because Airbnb, they canceled one of his bookings, and Dr. Haider was in the middle of a month-long booking. In fact, he was on day 3 of this month-long booking before he got the notice about having this cancel. That's a real kick to the nuts. And what they were saying is, quote, our privacy policy, end quote, that was being jeopardized. That was in contradiction from Dr. Haider. But they didn't say very much, except that it could be something to do with illegal activity. Dr. Haider was able to get in touch with the property owner, the owner of the Airbnb unit, and he was able to get some interesting information. Apparently, the ISP, Comcast, they reported that the good doctor was doing illegal downloads, and specifically something along the lines of copyrighted data. And Dr. Haider just claims that he was browsing Twitter. This is according to him. So he's questioning if indeed that's even the case. But more than anything, I would suggest this is a good opportunity to look at the story like this, and it's time to use a VPN. If he were to use a VPN, I think that he would have been able to have been spared by all this, because it would have hidden exactly what he was looking at. If indeed it was something that's against the privacy policy, it doesn't look like it is. But more than anything, people should use a VPN. It's a good method of securing yourself. There's lots of good options out there. I would recommend Mulvad, but again, do your own research to see what's best for you. But yeah, it's too bad that Airbnb, they're very dictatorship in this thing, or they're just basically saying that you could get screwed over even if you have a month-long booking. But you know what? They have the ability to do this. This is their company. Vote with your feet in the end. If you don't like this, just don't use their services anymore. Go to a hotel, but it's going to be more pricey in the end.
I was once upon a time a bit more of a party animal than I am now. And I'll tell you, Len, I have done much worse things in an Airbnb and seen worse things done in an Airbnb than, quote unquote, downloading illegal content.
I've never been in one.
I mean, they're fine. I would say that generally speaking, you take an Airbnb if you care about proximity to like a niche event, because hotels would not be near niche events. And like you said, they could be a little pricier, but that was back in the day. I think Airbnbs are more expensive now. Dr. Haider, he's on the right track in one of the replies to his original tweet about how, the key is a distributed VPN that doesn't record your traffic. And, he's talking about blockchain in the response. I'm not 100% sure he's over the target there, but he's getting closer. And I think a lot of people are getting closer. I should mention that Airbnb activity as well over the last quarter or 2 quarters basically fallen off a cliff. It's very much, I think, a zero interest rate phenomenon. Both the idea that people are willing to travel to niche events to get Airbnbs, and that they're willing to, like, I'll tell you, in my recent trips to Montreal, this would be like 2019 now, I guess, so not that recent, but there's a number of responsibilities you have. Like, you have to make sure all the plants are watered every day. You have to make sure the porch is clean when they get home. You have to take the mail in. You have to take the garbage out. You have to clean when you get there. You have to clean when you leave. Put all the sheets in the wash machine before you go. Like, you're not really getting a deal, right? They're basically charging you to do the stuff that the maid would do, and they're not paying the maid to do it. It's really quite a racket. And, seeing stories like this, Airbnb can't be happy about this sort of thing. The doctor also raises one other interesting point. Who exactly did Comcast report the illegal activity to? Did they report it to the homeowner who reported it to Airbnb? Doesn't sound like it. To me, it sounds like this guy, I don't know him well. I've never heard of him. But it sounds like maybe he has some opinions that he shares online that are unpopular, maybe fall under the guise of or fall under the umbrella of online harm, as in the first story, or something of that nature. I don't know what it's going to take for people to wise up to the fact that this idea that politicalization of everything from banking to to overnight stays in someone else's house is going to last forever and only go one way? Do the people running these companies think that they will run those companies forever? Are they, monarchies that will last thousands of years? Or do they just assume that when the other side eventually takes over, and they will, that it's not going to cut the other way? It's an incredible kind of position to be taking, and the power they're exercising is for sure going to come back and bite them when the other side does it, because the other side will. That's the nature of the game. You build the weapon and everyone gets to use it, for friends and for enemies, as we always say. And I'm surprised that more people are not thinking about this kind of stuff and going, man, I don't want to use Airbnb. I don't want to use Twitter. I don't want to use any of these things. I'll find another way. I'll find a decentralized way. I'll use Tor. I'll use a VPN. And it seems like that's coming faster and faster. How long will that last once it starts? That's another good question. I don't know. How long until VPNs are scraping traffic, like Doc mentions here? All important questions, lots of moving parts.
They just got to get burned once before they realize what's the proper way of doing things. But at that point, it's too late. You've been burned. And oh well, let's move on. We'll talk about the EU, and they're talking about scanning private messages, and in fact, they're even using some sort of manipulated poll to try to take action along these lines. So a poll was conducted by the EU Department of the Interior, and they used this poll. It was done, and while the poll opinion was done favorably with to try to get the results they were trying to achieve. So questions they were proposing to the respondents were to do with online child sexual abuse, and obviously anybody that's going to oppose this thing is going to be negative towards that. They're going to say, do whatever you can to get rid of this, to scrub this off the internet and put these people behind bars. So they're trying to use these surveys as a way to try to sway their opinion, to make sure that then in the future they can scan people's private messages. And it seems like it's the wrong way to approach things. They obviously want to achieve this. The EU, this has been something they've been talking about for some time. They don't like private messages. They don't like end-to-end encryption type messages, and they want to get involved with that. And they're using this child sexual abuse content as a way to try to sway public opinion, to try to create laws and regulations to ensure that they have the ability to, well, look at your phone and see what's on it. It's too bad they're going down this path, but this is their MO. They're going to try to encroach as any way possible, and this is it. So they're using it's fucking heinous to use that. I can't sorry for swearing. It's heinous to use this type of thing, the online sexualization of children, as a way to sway people's opinions. But that's what they're doing, and these people need to be taken to task. I can't believe how they're trying to encroach on people's privacy, and they're going to just continually do it. And there's the only alternative people can do, as you mentioned in the previous story, Tor, VPN, and end-to-end encryption, and that's really the only way you can get around this. If not, you're just going to have to bend over, take it up the hoop, and give out whatever information you're going to be asking for. And even if they find something that could be even remotely damning to you, and it may not be in reality, they could use that against you. If they're going to be using these polls as a way to manipulate their data, they could use anything that's on your phone to manipulate anything to try to convict you. So this is too bad for them.
This is garbage, because if you continue to draw this line, and people can say, well, everyone always goes a slippery slope. They're just going to look at your messages. Like, no, man. There was a time when they wanted to look at mail, and that was going to be it, and a time when they wanted to only tap phones if they had a warrant, and that wasn't it. And now it's just your messages, but that's not going to be it either. It's not going to be it either. I do want to celebrate here a little bit, because you've dunked on me a few times for being like an Apple iPhone user on this show and on the other show, and I know it's not directly EU related anymore, but I think you probably saw this story about how Apple is unwilling to continue offering iMessage services in the UK, or in the UK, if the UK passes this bill that all end-to-end encrypted messaging systems must have a backdoor. And I would encourage other companies to do the same thing. We talk a lot about remnant and Isaiah's job theory in the Bitcoin space. And one of the reasons that it's related to this story is because when you bend the knee to appease the most people, right? If you're one of these people who thinks that you should be able to read messages or whatever, it feels good in the moment, but really you've not contributed to a cause that's worthwhile. And one of the problems with being one of these remnants, one of these people who doesn't want to water down the message, who refuses to give concessions, even if it's for quote unquote child exploitation. The thing about being one of those people is you just don't know how many people are with you until you do it. That's one of the hardest things about being one of these remnant types. is that everyone is afraid to be the first guy to say it. But once the first guy says it, a lot of people will hop on board. So you never know how many you are in number until someone takes a stand. This is the thing to take a stand on. And I think this is one where you will find there are many other people who feel the same way, that there's been so many lines crossed and one more is too many. And I hope that this, this kind of trend of refusing to give backdoors continues. Unfortunately here, some shady online data manipulation, perhaps a leading question here as well. But I think that we're getting to a point, it seems to be the common theme here, getting to a point where more and more people are going to say enough is enough. I don't want you looking at everything that I write anymore. I've seen what you've done to your political enemies, and I don't want it done to me.
Well, let's talk about North Korea. The hackers over there, they're at it again. This time they're targeting JumpCloud, and it's a popular IT management platform. And the North Korean hackers, they're out there every week, according to stories that we're reading. Well, we believe that they're affiliated with something called the Reconnaissance General Bureau, the RGB. Now, let's give that one.
Is that a government arm? Is that what that is? Should we name that? Should we rate that name still?
Let's rate it. It's Reconnaissance General Bureau. That's pretty bad. I won't give it more than 2 at the most, 2 out of 5. It's too bureaucratic to me.
Yeah, it's too plain. That definitely got picked up by somebody in branding over there at the North Korean government, and they probably took away the fun stuff. Oh, well, at least it's on brand. It sounds, North Korean, I guess, right? I think.
Well, those affiliated with the RGB, they were able to gain access to JumpCloud systems by exploiting a vulnerability in the company's software. And once inside, the hackers were able to steal sensitive data, including passwords, email addresses, and other personal information. This is par for the course every time they get in any type of system. The hackers were also able to use JumpCloud's platform to target other organizations. And in one case, the hackers used JumpCloud to gain access to the systems of a software solutions company. And from there, they were able to steal intellectual property and other sensitive data. That's going to be very costly for the intellectual property to be stolen. The RGB is a well-known North Korean hacking group, and they've been responsible for a number of high-profile cyber attacks. And the group is known for using its sophisticated techniques and its willingness to target high-value targets. And the JumpCloud hack is a reminder that even the most secure organizations out there are not immune to attacks. And it's important to be aware that the latest cybersecurity threats out there, you have to take steps to ensure that you have the most up-to-date software to protect your organization from an attack. And there's a twist here. The hackers, they made an OPSEC blunder, and that exposed their actual IP address. This allowed security researchers to track them down and identify them as North Korea actors. So they did a very, very a big no-no there. So it's a juicy story here with North Korean hackers, a security blunder, and a whole lot of sensitive information being stolen. But really, in the end, is stay safe and be careful out there, because there could be a North Korean hiding in a bush out there ready to steal your information. It could be in a grassy knoll. Who knows?
These guys are the equivalent, that kind of blunder is the equivalent of the McDonald's employee. It's the black hat hacker version of the McDonald's employee who forgets to put the salsa bags in with your breakfast burrito in the morning, even though you asked twice and even though you saw it on the order screen. I am shocked to hear that happened. And there's a couple of names here that we've talked about before. In the article is a few other notables. The Lazarus Group, also mentioned for
we've dealt with them many times.
Similar attacks. I think that was like a 3.5 out of 5 name as well. So good for them. It's interesting, this stuff that goes on in North Korea. One thing I thought about reading the story, and it's not really related to the sort of technical stuff, but think about how many times in the last, 7 years now, we heard that Russian teams were, hacking into stuff, the Clinton server, the DNC, the White House. They're in Trump's phone. They're in his records. They're in his businesses. They got stuff on them. They know where the bodies are. They got the nudes, whatever. Where's the North Korea stories? Because we've done a lot of this stuff over the last few months. North Korea's in here all the time. Like you mentioned, every week these guys are up to something. They're busy over there. And I don't know when anyone in the press is going to start to notice, hey, most of the attacks that are going on here are coming from this nation state actor, by the sounds of it, an actually sanctioned nation state arm as well. It seems to me to be some proof here, as you mentioned with the blunder, and yet we just keep hearing about Vlad and the boys over in the Eastern over in Eastern Europe. So I'm curious about when that's gonna change. It feels to me like it may at some point. But all in all, to wrap it up, same way you did. I mean, take care of your data, man. Take care of your systems. Don't be one of these guys who, goes to Best Buy, grabs a laptop, throws on Norton 360 or whatever, and thinks you're good to go. Take care and be aware of where you're browsing and how you're browsing, what tools you're using, where you're getting them, all these things. Plenty of resources. I'm sure Mark, for example, would help you if you sent him a nice message and asked for some ideas. So take advantage of the resources that are out there before you make a bad decision.
Mark Jung-un. He will help you out. Canadians out there, they're being scammed left, right, and center. A recent Freedom of Information request revealed that over 24,000 people in Canada had their phone numbers ported or the SIM swap without their permission in just a 10-month period of time. And this means that scammers were able to take over people's phone numbers and use them to commit some identity theft. And they can make unauthorized purchases or even take access to people's bank accounts, because obviously people are using SMS, and this is one way to get around that. Just don't use SMS as a two-factor authentication. This is another reason to avoid that altogether. So this article goes on to explain how these scams work and how to protect yourself. And the bottom line is, if you get a suspicious phone call, don't answer it. And if you do answer it because you really want to talk to the duct cleaning service on the other side, don't give out any personal information. So really stay frosty, Canada, because there's a lot of scammers out there. And there's some, I don't want to go too much into this, but just don't answer any phone calls and don't give information to anybody out there, because there's always an opportunity for people to take your information to scam you and even do a SIM swap attack. And that's going to impact you, especially if you're using SMS as two-factor authentication. It's pretty nasty if you get subjected to that.
Dude, you have to assume that the person who's answering the phone at Rogers Support is a moron and will get fleeced by even a semi-competent social engineer. So the answer, like you mentioned in there, you just can't use SMS two-factor. You can't do it. Like in the article here, it says that the switch was done with 3 pieces of information: the victim's postal code, the victim's date of birth, and the victim's approximate account balance. It's not that hard to get those numbers. Like if you go to Twitter enough times, you could find someone's date of birth, someone wishing them a happy birthday one time. If you go even further, you could see a picture of their house and be like that guy online who sees a photo and is able to pin it down in Google Maps within 3 kilometers every time. This stuff is easy to do, and it's even easier on your end to just use two-factor Authy. You mentioned open source one before. There's one from Microsoft, one from Google, a couple of other third-party ones. What is the open source two-factor authentication app? The rolling pin app.
The one I use is OTP.
There we go.
And OTP. So it's even password protected from when you log into it. You could back it up, so in case you move your phone from one phone to another, you could still import that data. So it's really good. It's open source. You could analyze the code to ensure there's nothing nefarious going on behind the scenes. Yeah, and OTP. Check it out on F-Droid.
Yeah, all these things are available to you, man. Don't leave it up to the quality of the person answering the phone at Rogers Support. It's your problem.
But you
mess that up.
Even more to CRTC, they're not publicly releasing the phone number fraud figures too. There's so much wrong with this. I don't know. It's just, I'm just going to move on, because this thing is just a head shaker from beginning to end. But another one that's a head shaker is OpenAI. Is their AI text classifier was considered to be a dud. And this tool, which was supposedly out there to help educators and researchers detect AI-generated text, was so inaccurate that it was more likely to flag human written text as AI generated than vice versa. In other words, it was more likely to call you a robot than to actually correctly identify a robot as a robot. So after months of poor performance, the OpenAI quietly shut down this tool in July of 2023, so just this month. The company blamed the tool's failure on its reliance on neural networks, which are notoriously difficult to train and could easily be fooled. So this whole thing, this OpenAI text classifier, was a bust. So too bad. It's so sad. And nothing else I really got to say about this. But yeah, it probably painted a lot of people in a poor light. I suspected that researchers, professors, teachers that were using this as a try way to flag their end users for using this. And yeah, they may have incorrectly said that some of the people are indeed using this, which is too bad because it could have harmed or blemished their records in the end. So this whole thing is just it's a can of worms, and it's going to get worse moving forward.
How far I should say has GPT fallen in the last month in terms of like public ether, public opinion, public sentiment around chatbots? I would say you're in a sentiment bear market on GPT for people who are in the know. There's a story, we may have covered it last week, I forget, but I read it for sure this week or last, about how the results of using GPT for basic stuff have basically fallen off a cliff. And the problem when these bots proliferate is that unless the bots are doing quality work, as more and more of the quote unquote research pool for the chat model becomes AI written, it's sort of like compounding decreases in quality, right? And like when you talk about this thing not being able to detect whether or not something is AI written or human written, that's embarrassing. You can pin down, I should say, an AI article in the first 3 sentences on almost any topic. This morning, for example, I looked to see if Remnant 2 was on Xbox Game Pass, and every article I found was ChatGPT for sure. Remnant 2 is a great game. It might be on Xbox's Game Pass. How do we know? We're going to find out more, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like a 800-word article that just basically says it's not on Game Pass. Like that's a ChatGPT article. And as more of that stuff hits the internet, and as I mentioned before, as that becomes the sort of the method of choice for people who just want to put stuff online to get page views, get clicks, whatever, the quality is going to go down. I can't believe that these guys couldn't figure this out. And on top of that, not that we're going to go down WorldCoin here, but I do have to mention Altman. Don't forget, Altman a month ago or 2 months ago said that everyone's got to be very careful about artificial intelligence and these chatbots. We got to really make sure that only a few people can use these things and develop them. He's trying to pull up the ladder, not for profit. I mean, partially for profit, but mostly because he knows how shitty the model is. If he leaves it for long enough, right? He knows the thing's not going to work for long enough. He knows someone else will outdo him. And he doesn't want that. And this is exactly why. I mean, to me, you've really seen a notable, discernible change in sentiment around these things. And, stuff like this is a great reason as to why you're seeing that.
Well, let's talk about change in sentiment. Let's talk about the government that is trying to buy your data, but some lawmakers are out there fighting back because they're saying that the Fourth Amendment, it's the Not for Sale Act, would make it illegal for law enforcement to purchase data without a warrant, court order, or a subpoena. So that's pretty darn good if they ever do this. But this is a critical piece of legislation that would protect your privacy and your right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. But the government is not going to go down without a fight. They're trying to weaken the bill and make it easier for them to get hands on your data. And that's why it's important. In a previous story, I was saying that this is democracy. Get in touch with your elected representative. Tell them you support the full text of the Fourth Amendment is not for sale act. And don't let the government out there strong arm their way to change the way the text is written and continually buy up your data. Fight back. Your privacy is definitely worth it. But yeah, this is something that is going to be noteworthy for a whole lot of people. But I don't think a lot of people are really noticing this, unfortunately, because this is really impactful. But it's kind of flying under the radar, which is too bad. This is something that should get a lot more press. But that's, I guess, why we're here to talk about it, to battle the cages.
How can they notice when the U.S. government is admitting that they have alien pilot corpses, lying around Area 51? Everything that you're paying attention to, Anon, is unimportant. It's stories like this where literal police departments are able to buy your phone data from your provider. Everything you do on your phone, anything they can get their hands on that's identifiable and attributable to you, they'll buy it. This is an important story. And as you see different loopholes close, I think, Len, vis-a-vis services like, you and I are in a couple of good group chats with a couple of very keen young fellas. And, we're in a Signal chat and a Telegram chat and a few others. And we're talking all the time now about what's the best way to make sure that these messages are secure and safe, right? And as we continue to do that, other people are doing the same thing. And so you're going to start seeing the clamps come down. This is sovereign individual stuff. And at the end of the day, the story, I think, is basically twofold or two-headed maybe. One is the government does not want any dissent to gain momentum. That's number one. I think that's an opinion style dissent. And the other is they need to know where the capital is. And as Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, unfortunately for the other cryptocurrencies, they'll probably get rugged. But in the interim, as they gain value and usability and adoption, I think you're going to see more and more legislation like this. And, I'll just note, Len, that it doesn't seem to me like either party is willing to stand up against many of these things, much the same way as the Uniparty in the States is for any war, much the same way as the Uniparty in the States is for any bonuses and basically looting the end of the empire for their own benefit. You're not going to see much resistance from this either, unfortunately. And this should give people kind of a wake-up call. Voting only does so much. You have to take matters into your own hands sometimes. And I think privacy, clearly, I mean, for you and me, it's not anything new, but for a lot of people, clearly this is going to be a big deal over the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, they have patience, though. That's one thing that the government has. If you look at some,
because they have dynastic thinking, because it doesn't matter who wins or loses. That the important stuff just keeps churning. Doesn't matter. It doesn't stop.
There's more than that. They could outweigh anyone. Look at a Mitch McConnell press conference, for instance. He could outweigh anybody. I can't sit there and watch the whole thing. You just watch him staring at the camera. I got to turn off the TV eventually.
Did you see Buddy behind him at that press conference? The two guys behind him. They're just like trying so hard not to wonder if that guy just passed on the mic, like at the lectern. And then Mitch at the end of the day, he ends up going past another press gaggle and
sandbagged or something.
Tries to tell some prepackaged joke, and he barely gets it out. And then the press asks him, "Did you see a doctor?" And immediately he returns to senile, feeble old man. Like these guys are Len.
Did you see Diane? Was it Feinstein?
Feinstein. Just say A. Just say A. Just say
she
I.
goes on with a whole spiel. All I gotta do is just say I do or I. But anyways, last story.
Today in 90-year-old rulers.
Oh my God, they'll be there forever. Anyways, the last story is a brief one. There has been a Linux kernel vulnerability that has been cleaned up and rectified in the latest Ubuntu security update. For anybody out there that is running Ubuntu, you may want to do it. Automatically downloads for most people, so I don't think it's going to impact it. But this security update fixes a bunch of vulnerabilities out there in the Linux kernel itself, and some of them even allow the access for local users to gain elevated access. Obviously, you don't want this, and others could cause a denial of service, like a system crash. So if you're using Ubuntu and you're not automatically updating, you may want to do so, because these security updates, these ones sealed off and fixed a whole bunch of security issues, a bunch of them apparently. So not much else to say aside from that. Just keep updating your operating system.
Nothing to add. Keep your OS up to date, like Len says. Kernels are important. Make sure you get the latest one. That's it. Access of Easy number 308 in the books. Make sure you check out the newsletter, accessofeasy.com. Sign up, get a discount on whatever you buy from EasyDNS next. And of course, listen to us, your favorite podcast player. Search for Access of Easy. You'll find us there every week, same time, Friday afternoon. Until next time, take care of yourselves, everybody.
Take care and come to our show, the Canadian Bitcoiner Show, because we're giving away $100 of Bitcoin on Monday. So you may want to.
That's right. That's right. We didn't run that by the Access of Easy production team. We are giving away $100 on Monday. So find out how. Check us out on Twitter. Good night, everybody.
Take care.